Okay, you're live.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Mahone Bay's Town Council meeting. This is the second and final meeting, regular meeting for the month of February. All of our councilors are here along with some of the staff, and we have one citizen who's going to be making a presentation. At the end of this session, before we go into an in-camera session, there will be an opportunity for anyone who may be watching and who wishes to remain until that time. You can ask questions of any topic that is going to be discussed tonight. So with that, we will begin. Council, you have an agenda that was emailed to you. What is your wish?
I'll move, we accept the agenda.
Okay. Councillor Burdick, are you seconding? Okay, it's been moved and seconded.
Mayor, I do have a question about the agenda, and I'm just trying to understand our protocol for items on the agenda that don't have the collateral, the normal supporting collateral material by the meeting cutoff date. Like, are those items something we would entertain, or through our normal standard processes, do we defer those items to a later date when the attachments are available in a timely manner for council to review before the meeting?
Okay, CAO has his hand up. Would you like to comment?
To distinguish between some of the items which are on here because they were referred from prior meetings and do have background that's confidential to council, and then a few that were added and I grant that don't have that background. I did bring to the mayor's attention that it might be appropriate to move some of the items that were introduced by members of council to new business, because I think that's normally where an item that doesn't have the background would be located. But that would be a discussion for council to have under approval of the agenda. From staff perspective, we did ask the members of council if they had background, and they said these items were being added for discussion without any background. So, you know, we've put them on, but I did raise that as something you may want to discuss under approval of agenda.
Okay, thank you. Given that the sponsors of 7.7, 7.8, and 7.9 did not provide any material, but have indicated to staff that the items are there for discussion purposes, I would entertain an amendment to the agenda to move 7.7, 7.8, 7.9 to new business. So moved by Councillor Feeney. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Carver. The motion to accept the agenda. 1 second, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Now, do you have a problem with the amendment?
None whatsoever, Your Worship.
Councillor Burdick? Deputy Mayor?
Just have a question in terms of when we move it there. So we're saying there can't be a motion on that?
That's right. There can't be a motion the same day that a topic is introduced.
So if we go back to those, how many items are those?
Three.
Yeah, so the council community partnerships, community and field improvements, the details are in the 5.3 submission by MBC. The details of that conversation there.
If we go back to Councillor Feeney's comment, Deputy Mayor,
yeah,
our protocol would be required that realization or that indication should have been made for the agenda when it came out at least 3 working days ago.
Where is that indicated? Where is that protocol indicated?
It's in the policy, the council meeting policy around the materials being presented or being available. CAO?
I disagree.
Oh, I just wanted to clarify in case there was some confusion there, though. Francis, if you were Deputy Mayor, if you were suggesting, could you make a motion on the correspondence 5.3, you are allowed, council members are allowed to introduce motions on correspondence.
Okay.
Yep, Mayor, my thinking was, as of late yesterday afternoon, there were 7 or 8 items on the agenda that did not have the corresponding information, not just the 3 we speak to now. I did see a late breaking email from Maureen that did have more collateral material. So, you know, at the time when we were thinking about this, it was really in the context of a very lengthy agenda with very little, you know, collateral material. And you really get into a situation where, you know, it's difficult to prepare for a meeting when you don't know what the topics are going to be about. So I do think, I just think that we should follow our standard protocol, but I think if there's a time sensitivity issue, I do think that we could change the submission from the Mahone Bay Center and make it an action item versus a for information item. And I think the deputy mayor could achieve a similar goal, if I'm reading the tea leaves correctly. If the details on those issues are really action items that are derived from the Mahone Bay Center documentation, then let's just move it to action items instead of just receive and file.
Mm-hmm.
And that way, I think the deputy mayor can speak to that point, and we can accommodate it without changing our protocol. I think, Deputy Mayor, does that make sense?
Well, as long as we can deliberate on it, however we want to move it. My I guess feeling is that I disagree with the interpretation of the policy, and that would be a topic for another day. But if we can achieve what is required by moving it to, what do you call it, action correspondence
action items.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
So CAO, what does that mean in real terms to move it to action item?
It's really just semantic, but there's no problem with that. You can always make motions on correspondence, whether it's action or information. So you don't really have to move it to be able to speak to it or make motions on it.
Yep. Okay. So we'll move the note from the Mahone Bay Center, Mahone Bay United, to action items, and that will cover off 7.8 and 7.9. Is that what we're saying?
Yes, please.
Okay. Anybody else like to move anything around? Okay. Then we will go to the minutes of the we got to have the vote on the agenda as amended, which moves now only 7.7 to new business. Okay, because 8 and 9 are going to be looked after through the Mahone Bay Center paper. Okay, all in favor? Motion's carried. Let's go to Mickey Johnson, who's going to do a presentation. Good evening, Mickey, and welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you for having me tonight. I guess the question is, why am I here tonight? And we'll just kind of roll with that. In September 2019, Council purchased a communications package that was designed for, amongst other things, to bring awareness, education, stronger communication, truth, and a friendly voice of engagement to its citizens. In October 2019, as part of this new communications package, Council was presented with a choice of new logos and encouraged to engage in a selection process that excluded citizen input. In December 2019, Council formally chose a new town logo without consideration or feedback of its citizens. In February 2020, the new diamond logo was revealed to the citizens of Mahone Bay through the mayor's newsletter. In March 2020, a petition protesting the new logo and a request for an appearance before council was delivered. In April 2020, a delegation appeared before council requesting the return of their old logo, their displeasure with the new logo, and of having been excluded from participation when a new town logo was being chosen. At this meeting, several councilors admitted there had been a process gap. Council voted unanimously on a motion to revisit their use of the diamond logo as its corporate logo, and to consider a process that would engage a wider range of stakeholders. At the time council voted for a new town logo, they had no idea how their citizens felt. Council had no idea that their citizens felt vested in how their town is represented. Council had no idea that their citizens even cared about their town corporate logo. Council had no idea if their citizens liked the colors, the font, the message, or if they found the new logo relatable or relevant. Council did not know how their citizens felt because council did not ask their citizens. At the time council chose the diamond logo, they might have made the best choice for council, but obviously they did not make the best choice for their citizens. If council had, you would not be listening to me tonight. Tonight, I am asking you, our current council, to choose to do the right thing. Stop using the diamond graphics. In consideration of the last year, please put the brakes on using any graphic or icon. Instead, use a word mark until a graphic logo can be corporately and collectively decided upon. Tonight, choose to move us forward in a new community-driven process that gives consideration to the preferences and feedback of your citizens. Tonight, choose to lead us in a process that fosters trust in our system and in you, our political representatives. Tonight, choose a public process that allows for feedback from all citizens rather than a private process that relies on informal feedback gathered from a selected range of citizens. Tonight, choose a process that hears and includes us rather than a process that ignored and excluded us. Or tonight, choose to do nothing, leaving us right here where we have been for over a year and where we will remain. As citizens of Mahone Bay, it is a given that we have a right to vote. Shouldn't we also be given a voice by those we voted for?
Thank you. Does anyone wish to comment in the time remaining? Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, just wanted to say thank you, Michelle, for raising it. I think it's on the agenda, and I'm sure council will deliberate on that, and based on the input you've given us, and I'm sure we'll come up with a good way forward. I appreciate your passion for this, and yeah, for your efforts. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Mickey.
Thank you.
I see Michelle on the screen, not Mickey. But
You know who I am.
always
Right.
good to see you.
Thank
And,
you.
and to come and talk to us at council. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to the next item, correspondence action items. And the only one that we have is the submission from the Mahone Bay Center and Mahone Bay United that went to Plan Mahone Bay, but which, yes, I'm sorry.
Can we circle back and approve the
And do the
minutes?
minutes?
Oh, we didn't. Well, look at that.
Thank you.
Okay, I thought we did. All in favor of approving the minutes? The motion was made on the amended minutes.
That was the agenda. Yeah, we never did the minutes at all, I don't think.
Mayor, I'd move that we approve the minutes as submitted.
I apologize, council, for that faux pas. Yes, please. Thank you, Councillor Feeney. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Carver, approve the minutes as presented. All in favor? That motion is now carried. Thank you very much for reminding me of that. We've had the town logo. Let's go down to the action item, the letter from Lynn Henniger. Deputy Mayor, would you want to speak to that as in reference to your 7.8 and 7.9 piece, or?
Yeah, yes, I can. So one of the reasons why it's probably come up again is because of the process that council has had about the Mahombe United and the Mahombe Center going into this collaboration to try and get the field upgraded. And so I thought, as a new council, we had not seen this officially, at least seen this document by Mahombe Center that was sent as a response to the Plan Mahombe process. So I thought it would put at least some context into why this piece of work is ongoing. And just like you've had Tim and Lynn articulate, we are in the process of putting together a proposal to seek some funding. The opportunity came very rapidly. It's an idea that has taken some time to brew. So we had the idea put together. We had sourced some quotes around how much it would cost to do these things. So it'll take there's a little bit of tweaking to be done for the full proposal to be ready. But we have an idea of the budget should be around 80,000. So my request to council would be for us to find a way to provide a letter of support, and for us to, in principle, approve that, even if it requires a vote at a later time, whether we can find a process through which that can be done. It's a quick turnaround, as you know. Requests for funding do not fit our timelines most of the time, and that's why it's come in the way it has. If we had the proposal fully flushed out and all ready to submit, we probably would have provided it to council as part of the package. But it's still there are a few things that need to be finalized. That's why you did not have there was no reason for us to keep it from council. That's why you did not have it in the package. So that's the one piece. If with guidance from I guess staff and council, my proposal would be that I can move a motion that staff council direct staff to draft the letter for council to show support for this proposal. Yeah.
Who is the letter being addressed to, Deputy Mayor?
I'll just let me get the name right. It's a Canada Healthy Communities Initiative.
Okay.
Yeah.
CAO, did you want to comment?
I guess, I'm quite aware of the Healthy Communities Initiative, and when the March 9th deadline came up, I knew that's right what it was for, because I've been contacted by lots of groups looking for the town's position on this or support or where they might go, but none of them had an application or anything to put in on our agenda for this meeting, so they haven't done that. So I guess it's a very competitive program. What I wanted to note was that typically if this is an application for town property, more than a letter of support is needed. I mean, this isn't a request for support for a third-party application. This is us making an application. Even if the center puts it in, we're going to have to be a co-applicant. It's on our property.
Mm-hmm. Do you know what is in their proposal now, CAO?
No, I haven't had this.
$80,000
The first
worth?
that I've heard of this proposal, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yep.
Councillor Feeney?
Well, I mean, I think we've heard kind of a compelling backstory from a citizens group that have people that we think highly of and have a lot of trust and confidence in. The difficult situation is this highly unusual and irregular way to seek support from council that has unusual and unknown consequences about a very significant town asset. So like, while I think like the intentions are good and I'm open-minded about providing a letter of support, I think we do need to acknowledge as reasonable people and as stewards and with our fiduciary duty that it's difficult to provide motions to support a proposal that we haven't had the chance to read. And while I have complete confidence that the proposal is appropriate, it would be highly unusual that the CAO hasn't even had a chance to review it. So like, I'm completely open to a special council meeting that we could have over a 20-minute period sometime before the letters due, so that we don't get hung up in the ambiguity between the council being asked to approve support for a proposal that we haven't read yet, because that doesn't strike me as an illustration of governance. That just shows an illustration of the wheels being greased. So I'm completely available for a special council meeting before that date, that letter is due to the authorities, so that we could make that motion and provide the letter of recommendation, or at least have the vote to do that. But I just don't know how in good conscience we can vote on something that we haven't even read yet, and we don't understand the ramifications of moving that forward, as this is not recreational land in its current criteria. I believe it's surplus land. It's classified as surplus land, not recreational land. And I do think there's an entire process that would have to happen if that land would be reclassified as recreational. And I think, as this has come up before last summer, it came up during the election, and it will come up now and ongoing. Like, I'm completely open-minded to having the conversation between council and the citizens about the virtues of converting that land from surplus to recreation. I think it'd be a wise decision to have that conversation, but it needs to be done in a responsible, open way that gives us the opportunity and gives staff the opportunity to at least report back to council with the moving parts.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Burdick had her hand up, then Councillor Carver and Councillor Now.
Yes, thank you. I would agree with a very, I guess, an overarching, but at the same time vague letter of support. When I was reading the letter, there were so many specific actions in there that it does seem to be a separate document for a later consideration of specificities. There are a lot of questions that are raised, but the overall, if there were one thing maybe that were drawn from the document that you would, Deputy Mayor, that you would ask to be considered as the primary consideration for the letter of support, that would be a helpful guiding thing. But because we have had the discussion, and I think, but there's not been a specific policy about the partnerships between the Mahone Bay Center and other organizations in the town. So that seems to need to be established.
Okay. Just Councillor Carver, before you ask your question, and I would underscore the CAO's comment that we're not just talking about a letter here where the town agrees it would be a good idea. We are in fact the ones that are applying for the funding. CAO?
I think this would allow co-application between the town and a community group, but where it's on our property, I think it would require
The
that.
town has to be, yes, okay. I'm sorry, Councillor Carver, please. Councillor Carver has the floor, Deputy Mayor. Wait, please. Councillor Carver?
Thank you. I share Councillor Feeney's sentiments about the importance of a correct process and fiduciary responsibility in approaching this. And I say that as somebody who is on record for really supporting the idea that that area remain as for community access. I really support that idea, and I support the absolute need that for this council to observe correct process and our fiduciary responsibilities on this. It's hard.
I'm sorry. go ahead. Okay. Councillor Now, did you have a comment?
Yes, I agree with Councillor Feeney in that we have to really show some support here. And referring back to the discussion we just had and the presentation we just had regarding the logo, I think we really have to be wary that we have to involve the public in this process as well. If we are going to be part of the process for applying, I think the Deputy Mayor mentioned the figure of something like $80,000 to complete this project. Is the town going to be responsible for any of the shortfalls? If we go ahead with this, does that mean that the field, the open space there, is no longer available for anything else? Because I know it had been discussed with regard to low-income housing, all kinds of different suggestions I've heard from the public. So I think we have to really have a look at it and see exactly what this entails throughout the whole process before we can make a decision. So I think maybe if we can get more information, have that special meeting, and so that we can have a real in-depth discussion on it, I think that's the best way to go.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, please.
Sorry, Councillor Carver, I wanted to respond to Councillor Bardic's question before you talked. That's why I was raising my hand. I wasn't planning to interrupt you. I think the element that was raised was the ideas that was shared by Mahombe Center and Mahombe United around the Plan Mahombe process. Those were ideas. I was just providing that as a context to this particular proposal application, and then I'll speak later to those ideas. I get the feedback around us requiring to go through due process, and I appreciate that. I think we should. I wasn't saying that we need to. I probably did not communicate it very well. I was saying that we need to, in principle, what I wanted to find out from council is, in principle, if council is supportive of this proposal. I don't fully get the sense that council is there yet, but I would be open to that special meeting so that we can have that conversation when the proposal is fully written, and then have a very good and thorough discussion about it. Hopefully, we can do that. I guess before the timeline. It would be a pity if this funding was missed because of procedural issues at council, rather than I guess larger issues. I think that's where I'd laid out. I have questions around whether it's a town that needs to apply, but those we can iron out with staff and figure out what's the best way to go about that.
Okay. Councillor Feeney?
Mayor, I think we're on the right path here, in the sense that I think council will be open-minded and willing to move this agenda along one path or the other. We just need to have some semblance of protocol so that the staff can review and make a recommendation to the council and yourself that the town, on the impact of the town, given its town land. And so if this proposal is ready to be reviewed by staff early next week, I think it would be wise for us to have a special meeting later next week. And then we could, with the benefit of staff's input and recommendation, I think we could have we could intelligently and responsibly, vote on a motion to provide the letter of support one way or the other. So
Okay.
do you think we need a notice of motion this evening so that we could actually hear and vote upon a motion later next week, if that was a timeline that could be accommodated by everybody?
CAO?
I would just say no to the need for a notice of motion, but a motion to schedule the special meeting would be necessary. So you could do that tonight.
Okay. And further to my earlier reference to the contracted agreement that we have on the Mahombe Civic Marina property, I think it's important for the Mahone Bay Center and Mahone Bay United to appreciate that this land, the recreational land we're talking about, is owned by the town of Mahone Bay. As a matter of record, it is the landlord, and any improvements that are made to this property remain with the town should Mahone Bay United or Mahone Bay Center at some point in the future decide to no longer be involved or be associated with that recreational property. The marina people have the same thing. Any improvements they make, particularly those that are not movable, become the property of the town of Mahone Bay and subject to the agreement that we have with them. Councillor Feeney.
Mayor, I'd move that council direct staff to schedule a special meeting of the Mahone Bay Town Council on Thursday, the 4th at an appropriate time, so that we can review the Mahone Bay Center / Mahone Bay United proposal and vote upon providing that proposal a letter of support from council and the town.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Carver. You've heard the motion.
I think Dylan wants to weigh in there, Mayor.
I see him. Mr. Hyde.
Want to weigh in to say I'm on vacation next Thursday and Friday, but I think we could still reasonably have a special meeting at noon on Monday, the 8th, if council would be willing. I mean, that still gives us more than 24 hours before the deadline.
Councillor Feeney.
Absolutely, Mayor. If that's a better time for everyone, happy to make that change to the motion.
Councillor Carver, are you in agreement with that date change from the 4th to the 8th? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hyde. Deputy Mayor. You're on mute, sir.
Sorry. Thank you for being very flexible, but I'll be worried moving it to the 8th a little bit. Is it possible to do it on the Wednesday before you leave?
Can you guys get the application and maybe some time tomorrow to go over it with me?
Yeah, it probably will not be finished, but at least can give you a gist of everything, and we can maybe get the final one to you by Monday, maybe.
Yeah, if you could even send something tomorrow and then we could take some time Monday or Tuesday, then I think we could pull off Wednesday. I haven't looked at the calendar for Wednesday for what time yet, but
yeah.
So
Councillor Feeney.
Mayor, the theme is accommodation and flexibility. So if that date, Wednesday, the 3rd, works for everybody, fair enough. And I realize that we may only have a half an hour for this meeting, but it's 24 hours in the day, so I'm sure we can squeeze it in at some point.
If the documentation is shared with council in advance of the meeting, it should not take very long to do the business at hand for the 3rd of March. Is that our day now?
I think we're talking about noon on Wednesday the 3rd now. I don't have anything
Okay.
at noon, so hopefully that works.
Councillor Feeney, you're okay with that? Councillor Carver as the seconder. Okay, moved and seconded that sometime on Wednesday, the 3rd of March, we will have an opportunity at a special meeting to discuss and vote on our support for the proposal from the Mahone Bay Center / Mahone Bay United Group. Any further questions on the motion?
I just want to add that to Francis and anybody else who's watching, who's working on this application, you don't have to get everything finished before you talk to us, because chances are you're going to want to make some changes on the basis of talking to us. So Don't worry too much about that.
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor? The motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, so that's that one. Now let's go to the correspondence information items remaining, the NSFM Monday memo of February the 8th and the NSFM Monday memo of February the 17th. What is your wish, Deputy Mayor?
I just wanted to say, please don't hate me, because I hadn't finished with that action item.
Fair enough.
Okay, do you want to talk about it now?
Yes, please, if you don't mind.
All right, go ahead.
So that there were the elements in that hadn't seen this documentation back in October when we joined council, and there are elements in there that, to a certain extent, some of the issues that were there came up during our strategic planning conversations. And I was sort of wondering where council is at in terms of, do we feel that we're ready, having discussed some elements there, especially around recreation and the lack of a recreation department? Will council feel that rather than wait until the Plan Mahombe piece is done, that we might be in a position to move on at least one of those things or two of them that have been proposed there? And the ones that I would be thinking about is the formation of a recreation committee that has been suggested, and the exploration of policies around recreation and active living.
CAO, would you like to speak to that?
I don't even really know where I would start, Mr. Mayor. I guess from my perspective, we don't have a rec department and there's nothing in our strategic plan about recreation. So I would say if council would start with a strategic plan, and then if there's anything in the new strategic plan, we talk about it at budget time and we kind of go from there. There's certainly a way that it would roll out, but if it doesn't appear in the strategic plan, then I, as a staff person, I wouldn't really have much more to say.
Okay, thank you. So as the strategic plan falls into place, as we discussed on the Friday and then again on the Saturday session and then the session on Wednesday, that's where these things have to start, is with the strategic plan. Councillor Feeney.
So I know, Mayor, I think in our Saturday session that the deputy mayor, did speak about, the recreation agenda and the fact that, we don't have a recreation department, and, wanting to kind of illuminate that fact and talk about some of the options as far as leveraging the partnerships. One of the partners is, has correspondence here this evening. We also have the Mahombe Pool Society, for example. So we have a number of examples, and I think the deputy mayor asked the question about, are we willing to hear more about this? And look at that as a business model, in lack of a better word, that works for the town. Instead of having a recreation department, we would partner with not-for-profits or third-party organizations. So we just, to be fair to everybody, and the deputy mayor and the Mahombe Center for Packaging, we just haven't had an opportunity to have the conversation. So we do have this document this evening. It hasn't had any real soak time, but I would think that this is the kind of conversation we would have at the strategy and policy meeting when we're able to get that scheduled. Mm-hmm. And I know we've had challenges given the last month about getting that meeting scheduled, but I do think that this conversation could be prioritized at the expense of some of the other bylaw review items that are also scheduled for that meeting. So if we were going to have that meeting next month, at some point in the month of March, when we look at all of the items that we've scheduled to be reviewed at that discussion, maybe this item could bump some of those other items to a later date because they're not as time sensitive. So those are my thoughts.
I would also point out that the documentation from the Mahombe Center and Mahombe United have been submitted to the Plan Mahombe group and the work that they're doing. So that process is also aware of it. Mr. Hyde, and then Councillor Burdick.
Just connections to ongoing processes, and Councillor Feeney noted the maybe our approach is to work with community groups. It's been an approach we've been following for a long time, and it seems to work in some ways and could probably be improved in others. And I just wanted to note that on the asset management fact sheets, the council did approve that the committee spent quite a bit of time on. The committee discussed recreational infrastructure and partnerships, and one of the goals that's cited there is facilitating the provision of recreational opportunities by empowering and supporting community groups and initiatives. So there is an understanding in approved council documentation with respect to recreation. It just speaks to the management of assets as opposed to recreational programming or operation. So that's kind of where we have gone in terms of making a policy commitment, and it is in line with this conversation. So I just wanted to note that.
Councillor Burdick.
It does seem like there are multiple similar conversations happening right now about this. We're sort of in the middle of our strategic plan where it has come up, but it hasn't been finalized. And then in these other forms also. My thought when I was reading the letter was, of course, the sort of circular is like that. This looks like a job for a department rather than a committee because there are such specific entities involved rather than sort of conceptual things. I mean, the conceptual thing is that there would be this partnership, but then the practical aspects do seem like management type things. So it does seem like there's ongoing,
CAO, and then the deputy mayor.
Sorry for continually interjecting. I just wanted to say that was very insightful, Alice, with regards to the community history of recreation committees. And just so that everybody knows, because some of the new councillors may not be familiar, pretty much every municipality around Nova Scotia on the old council manager system had recreation committees, also public works committees and other committees sometimes with respect to utilities. And those committees were phased out when the CAO system was instituted. So essentially there was an understanding that professional management was needed and council would set the overall policies, set the budgets, and staff would carry it out. But if Carl were still here to tell you, he would tell you about supervising job sites as chairman of the Public Works Committee. So you're absolutely right that there was a move away from managerial responsibilities taking place at a committee level to council looking at the big picture and putting resources in place so that staff would carry those functions. And at some point, a decision that staff would not carry out those functions anymore, which is why we're currently not doing recreational functions.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor?
I was wondering if maybe the best thing would be just to put a motion that council put this item forward to the Policy and Strategy Committee for and be prioritized, basically.
Do we have to have a motion to move that to the Policy and Strategic Planning Committee?
At least as the process currently stands, until we potentially make
Till we get
some committee's terms, then yes, I would suggest that.
If we can find time to do it. A time to do it. Okay, so Deputy Mayor's made a motion. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Burdick seconds. The motion is to refer this item to the Strategy and Policy Committee. Councillor Kerr, you have a question?
Yes, I have a comment about the wording of the motion. I'm reluctant to assign the priority right now. My preference would be to wait until the item gets to the
committee,
the committee, and that the a priority be assigned then.
Relative to the other things on the agenda.
Yeah. I need, I would want to see the full range of what's on the agenda and assign the priority then.
So we will just by motion refer this item to the Strategy and Policy Committee. We won't reference the priority.
Well, if the deputy mayor and the seconder agree.
Of course.
Fair enough.
Deputy Mayor?
Fair enough.
Seconder? Agreed, Councillor Burdick? Okay. Any further questions on the motion? All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. What's next? NSFM Monday memo? Will we go to that, do you think, or?
Mayor, I'd move that we receive and file the correspondence.
Thank you, and Councillor Carver seconds that. Thank you very much. Question? All in favor? The motion's carried. Thank you. Staff reports, 6.1, the staff report for the 25th of February. Questions for the CAO?
Yes, as usual, available to take questions if there are any. I just wanted to note this is the second meeting of the month, so it is a full report if there's any questions on any of the 42 pages.
From memory, of course.
And yes, I'll note I can put it up on the screen as needed, but usually to facilitate discussion, I'll wait until there's anything I need to.
Okay. Any questions? Councillor Carver.
Thank you. I had circulated some questions earlier for the CAO, which he has kindly answered, but I did just want to throw one of them out just for a refreshment for everybody. It's about the meeting with the housing department official that we had agreed that we wanted to hold, and we wanted to invite from the housing department. But given all the changes that are happening, I'm sort of wondering if the CAO could give us a bit of flavor about what might happen next with our ability to access and have conversation.
Yeah, my expectation is that they will be reaching out to us. I know that our municipal advisor contacted me, and that wasn't saying it was specific to this change, but said it's been a while and it would be good to have a chance to have a chat. So we do have a brief chat scheduled next week. And one of the things that I wanted to ask her was, is there going to be a rollout to the councils of what does this change mean? We just got used to the idea of housing being under that banner. Now it's back out. And infrastructure, whatever that means, is out. And certainly we want our infrastructure in. So I think there's going to be a number of questions about this change. So maybe we wait if they're going to come to us. And if they don't, then we'll have to figure out how to approach them.
Councillor Wilson.
I just have a question about the, on page 33, you mentioned the Edgewater Street work that's being done with Coastal Action and I think the engineering company from Halifax. And I understand that whatever the engineering company's name is, I've forgotten, have come back to the group and said, oh, by the way, that the work you're doing, before we can do it, we need to do a geotechnical survey of some sort that's going to cost $30,000. And I just wondered if there's been any resolution to that question, not least because you would think that an engineering company that made a recommendation to do X would have checked to see if X was possible before they made the recommendation.
Yeah, I can speak to it a little bit. My understanding about the geotechnical has to do with the estimation of quantities of materials if there's settling, and the engineers, maybe they should have in 2016 said the first step's going to be geotechnical, but they did create some contingencies in those estimates, and probably they're thinking those contingencies are need to be tightened up more now because this is a very small demonstration project. So my suggestion would be the geotechnical is valuable. It's going to help advance the whole project. It'll make it easier to get support for the remainder of the project. But my understanding of the current status is that there were a couple of possible buckets of funding that some of the scientific partners, Dalhousie and CBCL, were looking to, or Dalhousie, St. Mary's on this one, we're looking to for possible funding for those geotechnical. So if possible, I'd like to let them pursue the external funding. Sometimes they're lucky, they come back and they just tell us they took care of it, and it'll make it that much better for us. But that's my understanding of the current status.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Carver?
If I may, thank you. I did have one other item that I wanted to query. It was about the bylaw and policy review item. My recollection is that in the fall, when we talked about meeting times and how our meetings were going to unfold, that there were quite a few ideas that were thrown out about possible changes in the council policy and in the committee policy. So when I asked that what had happened to it, CAO's answer was that it wasn't on the list of policies that staff had been directed to revise. So I was just a little puzzled by that. That I thought that was on the list of policies that for revision, because there were some housekeeping stuff in those policies that were mentioned, as well as some possible changes around timing of agendas for council and others.
I can just recap for everyone because it was a busy time with orientation, but we had a lot of discussion. There were a few specific directions to staff to make amendments, and those came back to council in January and were approved. I do think there was a thought, and maybe have been specifically expressed by at least one or two members of council, that they would like to revisit. And after a little bit of time with the current structure, with the current meeting schedule, that once that committee was a place to do so, that it would be appropriate to raise it at policy and strategy. But we had no motion directing us to that at that time.
So would it be appropriate to make a motion now to add that to the list for review?
It's your list, and then it'll be the committee's challenge to prioritize. But yes, that would be totally appropriate.
Okay, I would make a motion to add the town council policy and committee's policy to the list for review at the Policy and Strategy Committee.
Okay, do we have a seconder?
Seconder.
Councillor Feeney, okay. Moved and seconded. We're going to add to our Strategy and Policy Committee, which may meet, who knows? Anyone have any questions about the motion? All in favor? The motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor Carver.
Thank you.
Anything else for the CAO? Councillor Burdick.
It's just a comment, and that's about, my interest was really piqued about the relationship between the Riverport Electric Shared Service Committee. So I'm looking forward to the March report about that.
Yes, I did.
Now that
I also touched on that just a little bit when we were having our Audit and Finance Committee meeting as well, with respect to the electrical utility. So yes, a lot to come about that. And apologies to Councillor Wilson, who is our representative on this committee, which has not met since the new council. But I think it's not meeting for reasons that we'll get into, because they've had so much turnover that there's a need to revamp some of our basic agreements. And I think that's a good thing. So we're looking forward to that.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anyone else? CAO, would you like a motion to approve as presented?
It's always good. I don't know that we consistently do it, but if I'm asked, I'd always say sure.
Okay, would entertain a motion to approve the staff report as presented. Moved by Councillor Wilson. We have a seconder. Councillor Now. Hearing no. Councillor Carver.
I do have a question. Are we
Okay.
Approving it or accepting it?
It should be accepting it. Sorry, I didn't catch how
Not
it was
approved. It
said.
should be accepted.
Thank you.
Normally we do it, we accept it. Thank you for that. Councillor Wilson, okay with that word change? Councillor Now, we're going to accept, not approve. Okay. All in favor? Motion's carried. We've accepted your report, Mr. Hyde. Okay, next on our list is the staff report on town hall renovations.
Right, so we're moving along with this. We've just got the tender. I know you guys are waiting for some things. You see some note in there saying that those things will be coming to closed session and then probably to a subsequent open session report. But at this time, what we're talking about are exciting paint and flooring details. So I hope that some members of council were able to take up the offer to go in and take a look at those samples, looking around, seeing if anybody's showing recognition or not. And if you didn't, maybe you don't care that much, but essentially what's being proposed there is included. There's two steps. One is a direction with respect to the choice of flooring and walls. And the next one is to give us direction to bring a report with recommendations around equipment and furniture for the chambers.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Burdick?
I did get in there and I did see those two samples, and I didn't see as much difference as you all did, but my feeling is that staff is working in there, so I don't see any reason why we wouldn't entertain this motion. So I would like to make that motion.
Okay. The motion as presented in the package,
Yes.
that council approve paint color and flooring combination A, and that
Yes.
council direct staff to investigate furniture and equipment options for council chambers and bring options back to a future council meeting. That is your motion?
That is my motion, yes.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Carver will second that motion. Does anyone have any questions on the motion? Deputy Mayor. On mute, sir.
Struggling with this, it's probably not on the motion, but I was just curious that we will discuss some of the items we talked about in a closed session. We'll discuss them in a closed session again.
Yeah, just if I
Yeah.
can, so we've had requests for change orders. And so the change orders will be presented in financial terms in closed session. And then if they're accepted, then we'll do a report in the open session with the new resulting project description and where we are. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? That motion is carried. Let's go to Town Council Policy 6.3.
We haven't had to test this one out yet, and that's good, but there was an acknowledged gap with respect to procedure for evicting people from an online meeting if the need were to arise. So thankfully we haven't had to do it. I have had to do it in person at one or two occasions, but thankfully we haven't had to do it this way, and we haven't had to do it in Mahone Bay. So that's great. Maureen had done up some language. I think it's pretty straightforward, but if anyone has any questions, don't hesitate to ask. And of course, the recommendation here is to your next meeting, because we always give you a meeting of advance notice with respect to policy. So we're not looking for a motion right now.
Okay. And the change is highlighted, 5.3B, I think.
Yeah, just that one clause. I can
Just
put
that
it up
one piece.
if needed. Yeah.
Okay. No Deputy Mayor.
I was just curious about, it specifically mentions, I believe, persons who are not council members or employees of the town. And so I was sort of wondering if Maureen decides to be rowdy, what's the procedure for her?
Sure, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that's up to me in that case, but I'll take care of it.
Okay. We don't need it in policy, in writing?
Well, so as far as, staff have a code of conduct, which is enforceable by me as the CAO, and then I have obligations to council under the CAO policy. So I think that's why this speaks to people who don't already have any type of accountability to the town.
And what about if it's you?
Well, that's what I said. I am covered under the CAO policy. Now, council has had, and it's actually on that list for policy and strategy review, had a discussion about development of some additional policies around CAO and council conduct. I think those are continuous discussions, really.
We'll have a change request for the sliding door with the sharks underneath it, right? See,
Yeah. We'll get a remote button so someone on council can press the button when the CAO is standing in the right spot.
Just one of those hooks that comes across. That's good enough.
Okay, so this is just, this will be brought up at a future meeting, CAO?
Yeah, it'll automatically go on your next meeting agenda.
Next
That's
meeting.
how we're still doing policies unless we have a change with respect to the
Okay.
introducing them through the policy committee.
Does anyone wish to make a comment on the proposed change before we leave this item? Okay. Then let's go to the supportive workplace committee policy.
Right, so this one doubles as a opportunity to talk about the successful implementation of the original policy. I think we've had 18 months or 16 months, something like that, since council gave direction to have an internal staff committee doing wellness things, and the committee's brought a few different policies forward. Council has accepted. Some of them we changed and did some work on, and they came to a good conclusion. So just want to say it's been very positive. I'm one of the members of that for the first term. I won't be after this. And I wanted to thank Kelly and Megan for being the other, Megan Rafferty, and oh my God, why am I staring at Kelly Wilson? Let's thank Kelly Wilson for being on the committee, Kelly Redden for being on the committee. They've put a lot of time into this, and essentially we've had some real accomplishments. So we're no longer in need of terms that say that we will develop some of these policies, because they have been developed. And we want to recruit new town staff people to continue this internal committee work with the understanding that the terms have now changed and gotten a little bit easier and are more about sustaining the existing policies that have been developed within the budgets that council has approved. So that's why we're requesting this change, and then we would be going out to get 3 new staff people to do the next year.
Okay. So the change again is highlighted in yellow. Primarily it's paragraph 4, but there's a one line in paragraph 1, and we'll see then again that again at a future meeting, CAO.
Yeah, again, that will come automatically to your March 9th
Okay.
meeting, and if it's approved at that time, that will give us time to try to recruit some new people before the end of the year.
And will there always be someone from the senior management team working with this group?
Yeah, it's set up to include a sort of it's not, we don't have a union environment, so it's not strictly union management, but there is a senior manager, one staff person from the Public Works and Utilities side, and another staff person from the admin and finance side. So to get a fairly
As a
complete
given.
group. Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Carter.
Yes, as we're talking, it occurred to me, I was wondering, is it actually needed for council to approve a committee that works within the totally within the operational sides? I mean, the committee sends recommendations to council about policies that might help, but is it really required for council to approve the actual structure of the committee? Could that not be handled?
I guess the question is it required, and would it be advisable, or is there an advantage, or 2 different things? And strictly speaking, it's not required to have council's approval to have a committee. But I think it's quite advisable to have council approve and be aware of and support these kind of structures, especially where they do come back with budget implications, and they indicate to the council the level of commitment we have to being a healthy, supportive, professional development organization. So yeah, I don't think it should happen in the back rooms, and I think council should be aware, and then hopefully when it comes to budget, and now it's a standard item, council has an understanding of how we will appropriately use funds that are allocated for the purpose of wellness or professional development, whereas without this policy it would be a little bit more opaque, essentially relying on me to just make those decisions. So not strictly required, but I would say it's a good practice. I think it's good that we have it.
So that was absolutely, don't take that as any attempt to diminish the value of the committee. It was simply trying to sort out the governance and the operational stuff. And how that
it's good to
intersects.
ask now, because this is going to be the same thing with regards to safety policies, and I actually reference it in the document, in the report here. We've given rise to a safety process, which is going to, and we've been giving you updates in your council reports, but it's going to result in some new safety policies, which really have very little impact directly on council, and they are technical, and they're going to have been vetted through all the appropriate staff. But rather than me just saying that's our policy now, we will bring them to council and seek council's support for those policies.
Okay, thank you.
Is it fair to say that the key drivers on safety policies are from external focus, like the provincial safety department or federal safety requirements?
Yeah, well, the key driver is just bringing ourselves up to a modern standard of having a safety program. Our goal will become to be core certified under Construction Safety Nova Scotia, as a number of municipalities like Berwick have done, Chester have done. But to get to that point will be a little bit of an effort. So every step's a step in the right direction. And if we have some to close the gap on that certification and it costs money, then it will be council's discretion on that as a budget item.
Sure. Something we should have had, but we're getting
that's
it now.
how I would look at this. I think we've had a lot of buy-in from staff for safety, which obviously indicates that staff feel the need to put the focus on it. And that's really great, because that you need everybody, all hands on deck. It's not something you can impose.
Okay. Okay, so that'll go to our next meeting for the motion. That is the end of the staff reports. Thank you, CAO and staff, for that effort. Let's go to item number 7, council items. The first one, committee appointments. We still have a couple of vacancies on committees, but we had no applicants in the wrap up of the prior round. And I think, clerk, we are now embarking or have embarked on a second quest for applicants for the outstanding committee vacancies.
So, Your Worship, after the last council meeting, we issued a second call for committee volunteers. At this point, we have not had any applications. The line for that was last Friday. So staff are proposing we have an open call until we hear more from citizens that are interested in committees.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to 7.2, the municipal audit. I'm sorry, Councillor Carver.
Yes, was there a motion required for that to turn it into an open call as opposed to a time frame call?
I don't.
I wouldn't think so, Councillor Carver, because we have been in this situation before. This is our practice whenever we have open vacancies. Vacancies. We just have that call all the time.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll just need a motion when we get someone who's interested.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, next one is the municipal audit contract. Councillor Feeney.
Mayor, I'd move the council appoint Deloitte as the municipal auditor for the town of Mahone Bay for fiscal years 2021, 2021, 2022, 2023 audit engagements with the possibility of an additional 2-year extension at the sole direction of council.
Okay, Deputy Mayor. Seconding? Thank you. Councillor Wilson, you had a question? Okay. So Councillor Feeney's moved, the Deputy Mayor has seconded. Any other questions on the motion or comments? Councillor Feeney.
Mayor, just for the benefit of the YouTube community, this award is the result of an RFP that was favorably reviewed. Multiple auditors were competed for the town's business. And at the end of the day, the best and the cheapest, a provider, and fortunately, someone who knows the town the best, who's had a longstanding relationship with the town, is being awarded the bid.
Thank you. You've heard the motion. All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you. Let's go to the fire station exterior color. There was a survey done and citizens were presented with 3 opportunities and asked which color they preferred for the exterior color of the fire hall. And the doors are white. However, the 3 choices were gray, red, and blue. And red was the most chosen color by the citizens for the color of the fire hall. So I'm looking for my motion here. Entertain a motion that the exterior color as appropriate for the new fire hall would be red in response to the selection by citizens. Do we have a mover? Moved by Councillor Burdick. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Feeney. Questions or comments?
I just
Deputy
wanted to really
Mayor.
quickly, oh, sorry, I thought you saw
Oh,
my hand.
Deputy
I
Mayor,
just wanted to really
hand up
quickly
first,
note the
sir.
fire department had supported red. I'm sorry.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
I just wanted to note that this is one of those very few times that I disagree with residents and and their choice of color. But I will go with the majority, I guess.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Carver?
Yes, just a comment for the YouTube audience that there was 247 responders identified as being residents in the town.
Okay.
The town and fire service area.
Yeah. Thank you. Always important. Councillor Now.
Yeah, just I know it went out through the media. on CKBW, I believe. And for somehow or other, they didn't put the color as gray, they put it as black. And a lot of people responded that, no, we definitely don't want black. So I think that might have led to some confusion on the voting in that from that source. I preferably don't like the red, but I will go with the majority.
Clerk?
Yeah, that actually wasn't an option. The way the survey was set up, you had to pick one of those colors, and we did address that with CKBW, but yeah, that wasn't really one of the options when they were voting, so.
So,
Okay.
so black wasn't a choice. You had gray, red, and blue. That's
And
it.
it didn't just have a picture of gray. It also said the word gray, which I think Mo was trying to reiterate to the radio, but didn't get across.
Well, I won't tell you how much difficulty I've had with this drawing because by the color red, the stripe is blue, and it just doesn't work. Any other, Councillor Feeney?
Mayor, just a quick question about our protocol for providing information about, small micro decisions, or, and this one's bigger than a micro decision, through our project management team and on to the contractor. So I know we'll be in real difficulty if I'm asked to weigh in on my opinion on draperies or carpet color, but what is the so when we approve this, are we just providing that information? Like is Dylan, are you taking that information, Dylan, back through your project management regime to let people know how that is rolling out? Like what is the process for all of those little decisions around, color and font and anything that has to do with the nuances of the fire station project?
Yeah, we have regular project team meetings every 2 weeks in which there's always a list of items that are being considered. Typically, at this point, we're just starting to get into some of the finer details around like the key system, confirming appliances for the kitchen, stuff like that. For the most part, those go to the fire department to take a look at, get their opinion on. I don't, usually have much opinion as long as it meets the specs that Vigilant had originally put out, meets the fire department's requirements. As we get to, moving a little further along, there'll be some, I think, more aesthetic things inside the council will at least be updated on, and whether council decides that you really have a strong feeling about floor samples, like in the previous case, we'll probably make them available for you to look at. I haven't had any requests on that one yet. But yeah, so after tonight's meeting, I'll be talking to Megan in the morning and convey the decision around the color, and they'll go from there. I know that one, they just have to make the orders pretty early, especially in the COVID context. Everything's got to get in a little bit sooner.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Just one little further comment, Your Worship. I know the CAO had mentioned that the fire department voted for the red, but when they did their vote, gray wasn't one of the options. And I know some of the membership that cast votes went for the gray.
Okay. How do we manage that, clerk?
Everybody had the opportunity to vote. This is how the votes were collected, so
Okay.
they all had the chance.
Deputy Mayor was first and then Councillor Carver.
No, just lighthearted. I'd like to propose that this vote was rigged. Fresh.
Dominion voting machines? I don't think they were part of this one.
There you go. Yeah. Councillor Carver.
Thank you. It's my understanding that council is not bound to vote according to the results of the survey in the same way as we're not bound by other similar kinds of processes. So it could be an entirely fresh decision tonight by anybody if they wish to propose a different color.
Can we do a gray, red, blue stripe thing to?
I was just going to say,
Diagonal?
somebody's going to follow that up with a whole new idea, Neapolitan.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Councillor Carver? You shake your head no.
Oh, sorry. I think I need to be reminded of the motion.
Oh, The motion was that in accordance with the color chosen by our citizens who participated in the poll, the color is red. Much to the deputy mayor's consternation, I might add. All in favor? Motion's carried. Councillor Now was kind of slow going up there for that one.
A little reluctant, but anyway.
Okay, let's go to the Mahone Bay 2021 representative volunteer. And I am happy to tell you that we did have one nominee, and the one nominee is Lynn Henniger. And the rationale that was provided described Lynn as an unassuming, generous, tireless volunteer who brings creative thinking to community building. A former town councillor, Lynn is secretary of the Three Churches Foundation, which focuses on maintaining our iconic churches. She serves on the board of Lunenburg County Community Fund and is a founding member of Now Lunenburg County. She initiated and is president of Rural Riches, a nonprofit that shares proceeds from a weekly 50-50 draw with community volunteer organizations. And she is also chair of the Mahone Bay Center, a thriving volunteer-run gathering place, quote, at the heart of our community. And I spoke with Lynn tonight, and she would be most gracious in accepting this nomination. Councillor Now.
I would move that we nominate Lynn Henniger as our representative volunteer for this year.
Thank you. Seconded by the deputy mayor. Any questions? All in favor? A unanimous vote that Lynn Henniger is our 2021 Volunteer of the Year, and well-deserved and rightly so. Thank you. Let's go to Councillor Burdick.
Thank you, Mayor. This is, I brought this up as in the new business at the last council meeting, but it's a motion for a logo survey that would go out to the general public in the town. I think we know it's an ongoing issue. It's come up a few times. This might be a good entry point. I can read the motion and then we can discuss if you like.
Yes, please.
The motion is that council direct staff to conduct public engagement in the form of an online survey regarding opinions on the town logo. Questions in this, yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Questions in the survey could include: 1, are you satisfied with the town logo as it stands? And then at that point, if yes, no other responses would be necessary unless desired by the respondent. If no, then the follow-up questions could be: 2, do you think that a new logo design process is a priority for the council's new term? And 3, if you prefer a new logo, what are the design elements you would like included? Please include any considerations you deem important. For example, visual factors, cultural symbols, accessibility concerns, etc.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that? Deputy Mayor seconds. Questions or comments on the proposed motion? Deputy Mayor, or I'm sorry, Councillor Feeney.
Mayor, so I think that, again, like I think this is quite, well intended and is driven by a lot of feedback from the community that I think you and the entire council have heard about. In some quarters, there are concerns about the existing logo. From my vantage point, where we are now is we have an authorized and approved logo. And that logo was designed and recommended from the subject matter expertise that we hired. We took the council of the day, took that recommendation, and we are where we are. I think if the inevitable conclusion of the Facebook survey is that we have a number of well-engaged individuals who take that opportunity to make their complaints with the logo known, that will be of no surprise to staff or any of the council. So my question would be, and I think Councillor Carver always spoke to this point about, so what do you do then? So, you know, we get a survey and 53 people respond and they say they fill out the form and they provide some feedback, and I have no doubt that the feedback will be will not be moderate. So like, I'm personally not anxious to revisit the logo issue until we understand if the existing logo has had enough soak time and if there's any significant deficiencies with the logo other than you know, personal concerns that happen from time to time when you're talking community of 1,000 people. We did hear a terrific presentation tonight, and we know that Mickey does speak for more, you know, more than herself. But where my head is that if we're really going to review and change the logo, we need to start down a path where there's a process where the whole topic can be reviewed, professional consultants can be engaged, and then we end up at some time in this term with something that people like better, if that's where council's head is. And I think there's a default that says, I'm going to get rid of the triangles, and I'm simply going to default back to the 3 churches.
Can't. Yeah.
And I think for a variety of reasons and based on national trends, like, built heritage is not being used by municipalities for their corporate logos. I just don't think the community has heard that side of the story yet about, like, you know, why we can't necessarily use the 3 churches for our corporate logo. So, hey, that's on us to be able to communicate that, but that's where we are. So I guess cutting to the chase, and thank you for the time, I'm a little worried about governance by Facebook consultation. I'd be more inclined to go to ask staff to provide a report back to council on a way forward where an evaluation of the existing logo could be conducted in a more methodical way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Councillor
you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I must confess that I came here bound and determined just to say no. But Michelle's presentation was quite worth listening to, and I have to compliment Councillor Burdick on how well crafted her approach is. Having said that, my inclination is to agree with Councillor Feeney that if you're going to do something like this, you have to be really careful how you ask the question, because if you ask it the wrong way, you're going to, I mean, look at what we just went through. We had 3 colors to choose from, and we ended up with a close result that most of us don't agree with. And I think with logos, we can ask the question and come back with an infinity of results, everything from, you know, reflecting our heritage, our built heritage, our native heritage, and so on and so forth. I put this in the context of a situation where we have, you know, the highest tax rate in Nova Scotia for our citizens. Our citizens pay 3 times as much for water as their neighbors do in Lunenburg and Bridgewater. And we have an electric utility that at times struggles in terms of how the money flows through. So I put this way, way down my list of priorities in terms of the things we should be worried about.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Burdick, it's your motion. I'll leave you to speak the last. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I hear folks. I think that there is from I guess with thinking about prioritization and thinking of what should be at the top of the list in terms of what council is talking about. I hear you there. What crosses my mind with this particular element is what are we sacrificing as council because we don't want to address it. And I think for me, I think there's a little bit of a community goodwill that we will be sacrificing if we decide not to at least reach out and show that we are responsive to some of the feedback that has come. We've already acknowledged some of the, I guess, the missteps that have gone on. I think it's incumbent upon us to act and do something that recompenses for that. I think the question is, what exactly does that need to be? The other piece to that, this that we probably maybe might not see is the element that due to some of the communication around this issue, the consultant that was used in this process, to a certain extent, their name has been, from my perspective, at least looking at it, been put under the bus in the sense that it was not their decision. They gave recommendations to council, and council made a decision. That I don't think everybody in the community fully understands that. There is a notion out there that it is the consultant that's responsible for this, and I believe that needs to be clarified, and this can be the process that might be helpful for us to clarify that. So I think and then I think the last piece is with there probably will be. I always go at things like this with hills to die on. I think this should not be a hill that council chooses to sacrifice the goodwill that will be needed when we have to make really tough decisions that may not be a very sweet pill for our residents. So I think if we can acquiesce a little bit of space here, it will serve us well for our term.
Okay. Councillor Now.
Yeah, I was one of the ones that was certainly in favor of, I know and I'll be the one to admit it, that we let the public down when we first did this because we didn't go out and seek their input. So I will certainly admit that. So I think that public consultation is important. I'm just not sure of the online way of doing it. I think there has to be a better way. Maybe what Councillor Feeney has suggested is that we direct staff to maybe they could investigate a little further. I'm not sure what the solution is, but I don't think the online way of going is the way, because I know there was some, we mentioned about the fire hall colors, and I don't want to belittle that one, but there were some certainly challenges in that survey. So I think we have to investigate and find a better way of getting the public input.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carver, and then we're back to you, Councillor Burdick. Councillor Carver.
It's such a complicated issue, and the passions really speak to people's attachment to our town. And everybody here, we're all passionately attached to our town and are working in its best interest to the best of our ability. One of the things that I think gets missed in the discussion is that we have an attachment to this place, our town, the place, and the way that the former logo conveyed that. But there's a difference between a logo that is representing a place and a logo that is representing a corporate entity. And as everybody knows, as I have said, I hope I didn't insult anybody. I really don't like change. I resist change, and I resisted the new logo. But it has really grown on me. So I've noticed that when I see it, even though I didn't like it at the beginning, and I was quite attached to former way, I found that this logo, when it appears on my screen, it looks bright and cheerful and kind of energetic and lively. And it conveys to me a message that really links with what it is that we're trying to do as a council around being leaders, being more advanced thinking and forward thinking, and providing excellent service, and sort of the environmental leadership that we have. It really, I really sincerely feel kind of cheered up when I see that logo now. So I'm just saying that because if I can move from that position of really not liking it very much, and I'll say again, I don't think we can go back to using the old symbolism of churches on a corporate town logo. I feel that pretty strongly. I don't think it's appropriate. So, and I really worry about an online survey. And I say that again, as somebody who's brought petitions to council in earlier times, because I felt so passionately and so strongly about something. And I felt that same feeling of, they don't get it. They don't get it, those people. But I wasn't sitting at the table then. So it's a different perspective. I can't support the motion, however well crafted as it's presented tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Burdick, would you, I had a couple of comments. Would you prefer it if I made mine and then you can sum it up? I'd just like to remind council that there were blocks of the public that didn't want the sewage treatment plant, that didn't want the water treatment plant, that didn't want the new fire hall. There's always groups of people that do, and there's groups of people that do not. In the case of the logo petition, I think the number was 68.
38.
Citizens of the town who signed the petition against the new logo and supporting a statement which in itself was false. That means that there are 740 other people who either support it or have no opinion. And as our former mayor used to say, there's the 10% who voice their complaints, the other 90% are silent. So unless we can find a way to tap into the whole of the town electorate, we're never going to have a clear picture. I like Councillor Carver. I voted against the logo the first time, and then I voted for it the second time that we had a motion on the logo. And that was in response to public commentary that we hadn't given them an opportunity to comment. I appreciate the feeling emanating from citizens when they talk about the old logo, a logo which we can't use anymore. It belongs to the Chamber of Commerce. We borrowed it about 6 years ago. But again, like Councillor Carver, I've become quite accustomed to that new logo. Not married to it. You know, I mean, if it did disappear, I'm not going to cry and gnash of teeth. Although I would point out that the platypus was designed by a committee. And to try and design the logo by a committee or by the public at large, we'll end up with the flag with the platypus on it. So I too would not be able to support this motion. Councillor Burdick, your summation, please.
Thank you. I want to preface this part by saying that I don't personally, and I don't think that that's what this question is about to any of you actually, but I don't personally have strong feelings one way or the other about the new logo versus the old logo. I do understand that it was retired for good reasons. I think that could be in the preamble to this survey. I don't think there's anything implicit in a survey that means that the answers will be one way or the other. I don't also think that a survey that's online has to be strictly through Facebook. That is one of the conduits. There can be through the newsletter if it's a longer timeline that you have. So there are ways of having multiple access routes for the survey. I do really think that it's a simple way of saying to the public, I know that you do not, some of you do not feel like you were consulted. We have an active public engagement policy now where there frequently people in the public are asked for their opinions about things. It would be a simple way of reaching back and saying, now what do you think? And the answer may be, you know what, I'm fine with it. And that would determine where things go from there. But I think it's a good faith sort of thing to do. I also just really want to point out, this is one of those examples where art is really shown to be incredibly important. It's a visual representation of the town, of the entity, yes, the corporate entity, but also there's no separation in some people's minds. So there's a way of, people are emotional about it. Maybe not everybody, but this would be a way for whoever wishes to respond, responds, and then moving on from there. But those are my points.
Thank you, Councillor Burdick. Okay, we have a motion. On the motion, as presented, do we want to record this vote, or do we need to? No? Okay.
One question first, Your Worship. Does the motion say online survey, or is it going to be done by other means too?
An online survey is all it says regarding opinions on the town logo, which in itself is kind of vague, but it just says online survey, Councillor now. Okay, on the motion. All in favor?
The deputy mayor is trying to speak.
Oh, was he trying to ask
Yeah.
a question? Okay, Deputy Mayor, go ahead. You're on mute
Yeah,
and you're underway.
I was trying to propose that we can amend that motion so that it includes online and other means, so that it's not just online.
Okay. Do we have a seconder? Okay, who originated the motion? You did.
Yeah.
Councillor Burdick. You have
Yes.
no problem with the amendment, obviously, and Deputy Mayor, you were the seconder?
Yes.
Then you have no problem with the amendment.
No.
So the motion now reads in the form of an online survey and other sources or other means?
Other means.
Other means. Okay. So all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion is defeated. Thank you. Good discussion. Okay, Councillor Wilson, Main Street water and sewer upgrade.
Thank you, Your Worship. Let me just get this thing up here. I'm sure you've all seen it, so I won't read my email to the mayor, which stemmed from a sidebar conversation that was being held last Saturday at our strategic planning session about the issues around water supply to the nursing home and the fact that they were going to have to spend, at that time, someone said $500,000 in cisterns and pumping capacity and so on to keep their project viable if we didn't do what is in our budget, which is to provide upgraded water and sewer lines up Main Street from Long Hill Road to, well, I was never sure about the conversation, whether it was the top. I mean, I understand now it's to 147 Main Street. And my suggestion would be to keep going to the town limits, but that's kind of the question. So having listened to that conversation and commented that maybe we should commit to the McLeod Group that we were going to put in those water and sewer lines, the mayor suggested that I prepare a motion. So, and thank you, Maureen, for making it at least legible. So the motion reads that council directs staff to initiate a project to install appropriately sized water, sewer, and storm runoff lines on Main Street from Long Hill Road to the town of Mahone Bay Blockhouse boundary on Main Street, including all necessary paving, curbing, sidewalks, et cetera, and to be started as soon as possible. Further, that council direct the CAO to confirm with his counterpart at McLeod Group Health Services Limited our intention to have this project completed in a timely manner to obviate the need for any cisterns or other remedial work on the new nursing home site, and to work with McLeod Group to develop satisfactory financial arrangements regarding any contribution to this project. So
Thank
there
you. CAO, do you want to comment on the numbers?
Yeah, I certainly can. So, you know, as Councillor Wilson acknowledged, this is already in the town's capital program, and we have been waiting for external funding. The council had put in an application for a project, approximately $4 million project, with 27% of that to come from the town and the remainder from external sources. And as noted, we have not received that confirmation. It's still in the hopper. It's confirmed that it's still in the hopper should there be another round, but we haven't had any movement on that in a while. McLeod Group does continue to move ahead. So in the background, we continue to keep our estimates up to date, and recently have been working because McLeod Group is moving closer to development permit approval. We have been working with them to update some estimates with respect to upgrading the service to that property. So basically from the water treatment facility to the new nursing home facility, and just that. So I do believe that, you know, the core of this motion is to ensure that we don't hesitate to support the work that would be necessary to serve the new nursing home. In that respect, it has my full support. As far as going further to talk about from Long Hill Road to the town boundary, I think if we look back on the original estimates and we look at what the water utility actually budgeted, we would not have the money to do that project on our own right now. And so I would suggest that outside of the budget context is something I wouldn't be able to support on the face of it, but either that could be referred to budget or the motion amended just simply to refer to the service to the nursing home itself. And I would certainly support that. And I think in the background, staff are working to make sure that we are in a position to support that.
What's the difference in numbers between the nursing home or going to the town line?
Well, I don't have the numbers for just the nursing home, but the numbers for the town line, if we did stormwater, wastewater, and water, I think we were talking about 1.7 to $2 million.
Okay.
2 million.
Okay. Councillor Feeney.
Mayor, just a couple points of clarification. So just refreshing my memory, like that project, Long Hill Road to the town boundaries, was, let's call it $2 million. And the town was going to fund, for the sake of rounding, $500,000 of it, with the other 1.5 round numbers coming from our other traditional partners. I think that's directionally right, Dylan, right?
Yeah.
Round numbers. So to the extent that the town and the town citizens and our tax base was going to support a $500,000 capital investment to get the entire project done, I think essentially what we're saying is that some blend of the town in that same plus or minus $500,000 range, plus contributions from McLeod Group, would get half the project done, because we're only going up to halfway up the hill. So, I mean, at the end of the day, from the town's perspective, I think it's the right thing to do, because we're not having a major development happen with no benefits to the community, with every dollar, and I think Councillor Wilson says as well, every dollar spent down over the hill in the cistern is, I mean, there's no value add to everyone else up the street. But it is disappointing that we're going to spend the same amount of money, but only get half the project. That, you know, that being said, that's just where we are, and I'm prepared to move along in under those parameters.
Councillor Wilson.
My concern, Your Worship, is if we go to Plan B, which is, I guess, Dylan's or the CAO's default plan, if we don't have any support from the other two sets of government, is we will be running a water line down the hill from the water treatment plant to the nursing home. Okay, fine. So that solves that problem. But it digs up half the street and puts in a water line. It doesn't do anything about the water line the rest of the way down the street, and it doesn't do anything about the storm sewer lines anywhere on the street, and it doesn't do anything about the sewage lines on that street. So for $500,000, we're getting arguably about 10% of the value, and I'm really concerned about that. And I guess I put it in the context that in the last 2 financial years, the town has run a surplus of $1.5 million total. And as I understand it, it's largely because of projects that weren't completed because matching funds weren't available. And I think at some point we have to bite the bullet and say we can't continue to budget these capital projects and not do them, and put the money away and do the same thing again next year, year after year. It's very problematic for me.
Deputy Mayor.
I think what comes up for me, a big piece is, so how it would be great if we were able to do that project, but how do we finance it? And are we talking about wiping out every cent we have in terms of reserves? That would probably be a little bit of a concern. So I think in terms of the spirit of the motion, I think I get it. I think there needs to be some, I guess, investigation on what can be done. I'm probably not in a place where I can sort of say, it's very clear to me how we would be able to fund that. And maybe Councillor Wilson has some thoughts about that he can share with us.
Okay, Councillor Now and then Councillor Carver.
Yeah, I fully support moving ahead with the project, at least getting the water from the water treatment plant down to as far as the nursing home. But on the other side of the coin too, I also support what Councillor Wilson's saying. If we're gonna have that dug up, even if it only means going that far, let's put in all the pipes that need replacing while it's dug up. Because otherwise we're gonna be incurring the same costs over the next few years, because it's gonna have to be done sooner or later. So, regardless of how far we go with it, let's do the complete work for what we do while we're got it dug up.
Thank you. Councillor Carver. You're on mute, Councillor Carver. You're on mute.
Yes, I just missed it.
Okay.
First of all, there hasn't been a seconder for the motion, so I just wanted to be sure we didn't forget that. I have a couple of questions. Is what kind of time frame are we looking at? And the second is, have we talked with our MLA about the situation and how urgent it's becoming, as the need is so immediate right now? And I won't repeat the concerns about how do we fund it. And I totally agree about not digging up the road 3 times when you can do it once.
I did speak with the MLA. It was about 3 weeks ago now, and that was one of the things that we had talked about. And she indicated, as the CAO suggested a few moments ago, it is on the top of the blotter on the chief of staff's desk at the provincial government our request for money for that. And she is of the opinion that as soon as the money starts to flow, we're at the top of the list. But now there was a change 3 or 4 days ago, and some of the ministers have changed. I would wait for the dust to settle and discuss again with the MLA, but I would ask the CAO to comment on, in particular, the timeline for the McLeod Group on this project.
Yeah, we're just in communication with them now. I really don't want to, there's a certain privacy to be respected. They are in the process of getting a development permit approved. And I think in that process, the engineering review connects in with our process to make sure that they're supported in having the necessary flows to the property. So that's right where we are now. Our engineer who works for the town on contract on this stuff, Kent, is engaged talking to their engineer. So we're at that point of understanding now, but I don't have a specific answer for the timeline. I will have soon.
Thank you. Councillor Feeney.
So if Mayor, if the discussion is around the town and the taxpayers out of our normal capital resources are going to fund the entire $2 million project from Long Hill Road to the town boundary with no government partner, with no partners. I can't get there. I mean, that's the entire capital program for the entire term of this council and part of the next term as well. Like that's our entire capital program for all of the top 4 initiatives. Mm-hmm. So if 6 months goes by and Suzanne and the rest and the government comes back and says, we're ready to move forward with infrastructure projects, like we won't have any matching money. Like there is no, like we have $500,000 to do our 25% of a $2 million project. But if we fund we have an $8 or $9 million program. So just so we all are on the same page, like if we do this 100% on our dollars, like no elimination of straight pipes, no Cherry Lane to Long Hill Road, water line, sewer line extension improvement, we will never eliminate the 55% water loss, and we will have no matching money to take advantage of the shoreline preservation initiative due to climate change mitigation. So I just think we have to understand like the relativity of how much money this is with no partners relative to our capital program. This is the entire capital program.
Thank you. Anyone else? We still need a seconder on the motion. Was Councillor Wilson's motion? Councillor Carver seconds?
I'm seconding it for the sake of making it official.
Thank you, Councillor Carver.
But now I'm wondering if there's a way of amending the motion to accommodate some of the concerns that have been raised.
Like if the motion is to support taking the $500,000 that we were going to spend already budgeted and augment that with McLeod Group funding to do what we can do, like that makes complete logical sense to me. But if we're going to do the same project that we talked about, that we put the program for, the $2 million project, I don't know what are your thoughts, Kelly?
Well, I think you make some really good points, and I certainly wouldn't want to jeopardize future projects. I guess my thinking is that if we started to pressure ourselves a little bit and committed to making the project happen, that we would find that we would get the matching funds more easily. I think you really have to push hard, and I don't know what the situation is with Suzanne and with the provincial government, and I know everything is currently in a state of flux, but I'm just looking at history of the last 3 years, and there's been no matching funds anywhere. And I look around at other communities, and there are matching funds for projects, and I wonder why. And I think it might have something to do with that we're not squeaking loud enough, and the squeaky wheel gets the grease. But to your point, Councillor Feeney, as a compromise position, I think that's a very wise thing to say. Okay, fine, we'll take $700,000 and go from the water treatment plant up on the hill down to the nursing home. And as we're going along and everything's dug up, we can supersize all the other pipes down at least to that point. So when we get some more money from the other governments, we can come up the hill and meet it. Fair enough.
Councillor Carver.
Yes, just as you're talking, I wasn't sure about the timelines again there, and the issue of there's not going to be any other governmental money if we start a project. Is that correct?
You mean, will they pay us back if we spend our money?
Yeah, no, they won't. Am I correct in thinking that they won't?
No, I don't think they do.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's what I was going to just briefly say in support of. I think Joe and Kelly have a good plan here. But if we do have a go ahead with the money that we and McLeod Group might put on the table, that's a great opportunity to say once this is being expended, it'll be too late to be matched, and we'll know exactly what the money is. There'll be a very clear indication it's going out the door. There can't be any question of our commitment. And maybe a Hail Mary with our provincial rep, and maybe the new, some of the new provincial representatives would be appropriate. So I think there's some strong rationale for that, for what's been proposed with using the money that we were hoping to use, and anything McLeod might be willing to contribute from opportunity costs on their end.
Thank you. Councillor Now, you had a comment?
Yes, Cloud Group aren't really that far along with their project as of yet. I'm wondering if the CAO in his conversations with them and his negotiations with them can find out from their architects and their construction crews as to if we can provide them with a timeline as to when we are looking at having the water there, and say, okay, yes, when you're ready for it, we'll have the water that far, and just to go from the treatment plant down to there, it might be another year or so down the road before they are ready for that water hookup anyway. So if we can find out some sort of a timeline as to when they would need that water hookup, then it might give us a little more time to abide to seek that extra funding.
Deputy Mayor.
So I think this sort of seems like we're getting some consensus on what we would like to do. I would want to propose to Kelly to maybe withdraw the motion and or maybe have a motion that speaks to numbers coming to the table, so that we can, as we're making the decision, have some numbers for us. I still feel a little bit loose on the numbers right now in terms of what we as council will be committing to spend on this, and that would make it difficult for me to vote for it, I guess.
CAO?
Yeah, not to suggest, that this motion shouldn't go to a vote if that's council's preference tonight, obviously Kelly's preference, but to Councillor Now's point about, we have a moment here to check in with the developer. And as I mentioned, we are doing that because it's part of their permit application process. It happens to be ongoing right now. That if there were a motion tonight to direct staff to bring a recommendation with respect to water wastewater renewal on Main at the location of and serving the nursing home and adjacent properties, then we would bring that report, and we would be able to do so with the information from the current process when that becomes available. But I do understand that represents a 1 or 2 council meetings from now. I say that because there's only 2 business days, I think, for the next package that we would be bringing that report. So it does represent a little bit of a delay.
Okay, Councillor Wilson, are you comfortable with that?
Yes, and I'd happily withdraw the motion with the agreement of my seconder. And it just occurred to me that all else being failing, we can just run some excess fire hose down the driveway across the street.
Okay, Councillor Carver, you're the seconder. You agree with the withdrawal of the motion? Are we
Yes,
going?
yes, that's fine. And while my mic is on, I could make the motion that was just recited by the CAO.
Yeah, so the motion is what he said.
Maureen, did you get that? Okay.
Oh, no.
So Maureen doesn't have to read back the tape. I think what I said, and Councillor Carver, correct me if this isn't what you remember, was that council directs staff to prepare a report and recommendation relative to renewal of water, wastewater system infrastructure serving the new nursing home site and adjacent properties.
Also, I'll make that motion.
That's good. Councillor Wilson, would you like to second that motion?
Well, it's certainly one up from establishing a committee, so yes.
Okay. Questions on the new motion? Well, if nothing else, we're flexible, I'll tell you. All in favor? Motion's carried. Good discussion. Okay, Councillor now. Fire station build, or are we going to leave that?
That's got to new business now.
New business, okay. So we're back to Deputy Mayor. Did you want to add anything else beyond on your discussion points? No? Okay. Then let's go to committee reports. The Audit and Finance Committee special meeting is there. The Asset Management Committee meeting, the draft minutes of February 18th. Neither one of them have a motion in them. They are quite straightforward. Does anyone have any questions?
Just a quick note, if I could, Mr. Mayor, with respect to the Asset Management Committee meeting, it does note the presentation of the results of our MAMP project. There will be a presentation of those results to council in March as well, most likely just in a written format. So I just wanted to make that note for anyone who felt like maybe they didn't get to see everything that was being referred to there.
Okay, thank you. All right. Let's go to new business. Councillor now. Fire station build phase 2.
Yeah, I'm just more or less an information seek here at a discussion maybe that we could have. I'm just wondering where we stand with that. The fire department is still willing to take on some financial responsibility in regard to the build of phase 2, which includes the larger auditorium part of it. And looking at the way the construction is coming with the other building, my feeling on it anyway is just that we can probably save a fair amount of money if we somehow, because we haven't heard anything from the application for funding on that yet from the governments, as per usual. But the sooner we do that, we're going to save money, because as it goes now, if we wait to do phase 2, we're going to have to do some deconstruction on phase 1 in order to put phase 2 to it. So if we can start this before phase 1 is finished and the outside exterior and all that's done, then we're going to save monies on having to build and unbuild that part of it. So there's some savings there on that part of it. Also, we wanted this facility to become a possibility for a shelter in the case of an emergency in the area. On looking at what is around and with the new requirements that have come out from REMO in regard to a shelter, there's not one facility in Lunenburg County, from Hubbard's right up through to the Queens County line and beyond, that meets the requirements for it to be a shelter. If we continue, if we carry on with phase 2 of our project here, then we would meet all the requirements required for to have that shelter. And I think that'd be a great asset and a great presentation point actually to government. And so we had mentioned earlier about discussions with MLA Suzanne Lomas-Croft regarding our other infrastructure projects. I think it'd be nice if we could have a meeting with her as council and include this project also, and make it known to them that, hey, look, you have not got a shelter in this whole part of the province. They just put a bunch of money into Middleton between the federal and provincial governments. They put in $2.2 million into building a facility that will act as a shelter in Middleton. The only thing they don't have is they haven't got the truck bays onto it, which Middleton is going to do. So those two layers of levels of government put in $2.2 million. The town of Middleton is putting in the whole sum of $186,000 into that whole project.
Hmm.
So it shows that there's money's there. It just takes the squeaky wheel to get it. Mind you, that was due to the area it was in, I think. So like I say, the fire department is still willing to contribute to that. And we had made that proposal before, which council delayed on, and I can see the reasonings for that. But just wondering if get some feelings on how we maybe propose we continue on with this project or what we're going to do with it.
CAO, what are you hearing back on our application to the federal government on that project?
Yeah, we honestly haven't heard anything either way since the fall. My last query about the status of it, we didn't get any information. So I don't. I think I've expressed before that my understanding through other CAOs is that some projects that had applied to this window have been contacted. So I can't say that we have received a negative response, but the lack of a response doesn't give me a lot of optimism.
Councillor, now, have you done the number crunching on this project? You know, what your group is prepared to contribute, how much we would be looking from other levels of government?
Well, if we had gotten the monies from the other levels of government, at that time, we'd probably be looking at about $200,000 or a little bit better from the fire department to make up the difference. I think the CAO would know better than I, but I think at one point we had thought this would come in around the $1 million mark.
Yeah, that was yeah. And what percentage of the phase 2 build would you describe as focused on an emergency shelter operation?
Well, the whole thing would be used as a shelter if the need should arise, because that whole auditorium would be able to be converted into a shelter. What we've got there for a community room right now would not be able to serve as a shelter because it doesn't have the size or the capability of handling any number of people. The auditorium that we are hoping to build under phase 2 would certainly meet any requirement that this area would need, as far as I can see.
Okay. Councillor Feeney.
So Mayor, I'm sure, municipal councilors and mayors and wardens across the province are disappointed by the lack of rollout of matching funds from our partners. We're in an unusual circumstance that we have big capital projects going on in the town, specifically, the fully funded project from the McLeod Group, plus the town's decision last year to proceed full steam ahead on, the fire hall. So, I mean, we are really losing the opportunity to leverage those big construction initiatives to leverage these other value-added projects. But on the other hand, I mean, our hands are largely tied. What I would say, and I think we had a good conversation about our limitations on the last item. The good news, and this is just one opinion, but the good news is we're going to have a budget deliberation and we're going to be working through the budget process here in another, 6 weeks or so. And we do have visibility on some big levers to pull, maybe an unusually high dividend from area, for example, that may be part of the funding mix, but we're not going to have it now. And we're not going to have it in 2021. We may have it next year though. So I think honestly, isn't the truthful answer here is that we're not going to be doing the phase 2 project for the fire hall right now. I mean, unless a Hail Mary comes out of thin blue air, I think it's just not going to happen right now. And I do think, to Councillor Now's point, we are going to throw some good money after bad if and when, and let's hope that money does come together. But I just don't see any sign that money is going to come right away. And let's just say it did. I mean, in our hierarchy of needs, I mean, we're going to have our own priorities, and it's not crystal clear if the phase 2 of the fire hall would supersede that of the water and sewer project. So I'm looking forward to the budget process, because we'll be able to have this conversation over many hours and many meetings, and then we'll be able to reset on where we are. I think we'll be able to address Councillor Wilson's point about what are you guys doing with all that money you've been hoarding over 3 years because you haven't done any capital projects. I do think it's going to be a fruitful conversation. It's just unfortunately not going to be for another 2 months.
Right. And in the meantime, we can press the buttons on the external sources, which really is where the discussion around phase 2 of the fire hall was hinged on the external monies becoming available, along with the contribution from the fire department itself. So you're right. It is something that we will discuss in our budget time. And in the interim, we can see if we can nudge some people.
Just we might need to get Maureen a phone.
With a wheelbarrow of money.
We may have to get Maureen to phone Luke. He may be keeling over and right over watching this council meeting. It's like, oh, they haven't listened to a thing I've said about debt ratios. I'm just.
We don't get to have flasks at the table anymore, but he's just watching on YouTube.
Yeah.
Councillor Carver.
Yes, I think Councillor Now's point is really well taken about the total lack of emergency shelter facilities across the whole county. I mean, that's a huge problem, but I'm reluctant to think that the town should be filling that gap. The provincial government should be really, really leading that one. And we can do something, I think, about advocating really strongly, but so should every other area of the county. That's my thought on that. So I'm just really glad that Councillor Now brought that need to our attention, the county need. So
I think it is a valid one. I mean, the town of Lunenburg, the town of Chester, MODL for the most part, none of them have the closest they get is the community college in Bridgewater, but it doesn't have the uninterrupted power source that they need in throughout the facility to support an emergency shelter situation. Perhaps we should go hat in hand to those other communities, because they would conceivably be able to benefit from the emergency shelter here in Mahone Bay, and not just the folks that are living here as contributors to our phase 2 build. Who knows?
Also, this leads me to the point that maybe, and it's been on the agenda for a while, the council meeting with the society, Mahone Bay Fire Department Society, to discuss some of these points. That meeting has never happened to my knowledge, and maybe it was something we could move forward to. And like I say, this shelter thing is just, to my mind anyway, a way of maybe pointing out to the higher levels of government that, hey, look, this is something that we need in this area. They've obviously saw the need in the valley and put the money in there. So, that was the reason I wanted to bring it up.
Thank you. CAO or clerk, can we look at engaging the fire department with that session that Councillor Now is referring to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the willingness has been conveyed. I know at the staff level, we've had a lot of meetings with the new fire department officers there with regards to capital budget planning. There's a large focus on trucks, which is great. So they're working on a long-term truck plan, is my understanding. And Luke and I have been trying to support that, and in line with that, need to firm up the estimates around the hall. So looking at the Middleton example, there certainly are some changes that could be made, explored between the town and the department to bring that cost down from the original estimates as well. So if we are doing it without the external funding. I'll reiterate the willingness of the council to meet, but it may be that there's a little bit of consideration to go into it. And I know there's a lot of things on the plate of the new chief at the moment. So, but I'll certainly renew that offer, and hopefully we can get a time that will work for everyone.
Okay, thank you. Anyone have anything else?
Just an aside to that, before I brought this to council, I did take it to the fire department to make sure that they were still willing to contribute and that type of thing before I even bothered to bring it up. I wanted to get their approval, and that was their concession too, that they, wanted it brought forward, so.
Good. Deputy Mayor, did you have a comment?
Not on the issue, but just trying to note, if we're done with that, it's past 9. We might do with a break before we go into the next one.
Okay. Before we take our break, sir, if we are finished with our agenda, do we have people engaged on YouTube?
Your Worship, we still have another item under new business, council and committee partnerships.
Council and community. Oh, I thought the deputy mayor was finished with his discussions. Deputy Mayor Kangata, that was yours, council and community partnerships. Was that part and parcel of the earlier discussion?
Yeah, we moved it up to, I can't remember where we moved it up to, and then
Yeah, we moved it up to correspondence action items.
Yeah, I think the conclusion was that that would be referred to the policy and strategy committee for conversation and prioritization.
Okay,
thank you.
And then if that's it, we do have people watching, and I have one question, Your Worship.
Okay.
It's a request for clarification about Councillor Feeney's statement about the soccer field. This person understands that the soccer field is surplus to the town's needs and is zoned residential, which means recreation is permitted. Question mark. I didn't phrase that well. Is permitted? Sorry.
So even though it was to Councillor Feeney's question, I think it's just a confirmation of the zoning. So Joe, I don't know if you want to speak to it or I can speak to it. Yeah.
Please.
So yeah, I mean, I can confirm that statement if it is a statement that it is zoned residential and that recreational uses are appropriate in that zone.
Mm-hmm. I think the nuance that I was trying to make is that under the town has classified that property as surplus versus recreational or green space at this point. And I think that, and other people around the table have been here far longer than I have, and I believe that classification is an outcome of the town regaining, ownership and control of that property after the school board handed the keys of the school and the adjacent property back to the town. But others may have more historical insight, but I believe it's been classified as surplus, for let's call it a good hunk of 20 years.
Okay. CAO?
Well, and even though I wasn't here for that hunk of time and I don't necessarily have the documentation around properties, my take on surplus just in general is, this property belongs to town, it's zoned residential, it has no purpose for municipal uses, it's not a park. So, as such, it is by its nature, a surplus piece of property. If it were zoned as a park, it would be different. And I think it does speak to how we maintain the property as well. Even though it is used for recreational purposes, the town does maintain it to a non-recreational standard. So we don't do the kind of maintenance that we would do if it was deemed to be a recreational facility.
Okay. Deputy Mayor, did you want to comment on the question?
Yeah, just a comment, and probably in the way of a question for more clarification, because I think there's a confusion between the classification and the zoning. And I don't think, well, me included, I don't think residents fully understand what that is and what the difference is. And I don't know if the CAO would be able to give more, I guess, information on that.
Yeah, the zoning speaks to what you're allowed to do with the property. So the town doesn't have to be the owner for the zoning to have an impact. So that in that sense, it's zoned as a residential property. If anyone owned it, that prescribes what the uses can be put to. But then because the town owns it, we would also have a classification in terms of how we treat it, in terms of how we maintain it or insure it or, operate it as the owner. So those are the two distinctions there. And I think it's important to note that the zoning does tend to have a relationship. So, we don't have any parkland that we say, oh, well, that's zoned as a piece of parkland, but we don't think of it as parkland. If it's zoned as parkland, then we're going to be obligated to treat it as parkland.
Okay. Councillor Carver, did you have your hand up? No? Okay, I thought you were going to ask us, you were going to jump in on this question. Clerk is Councillor Carver.
What it was, I was going to ask, don't we usually adjourn the meeting before the questions? But I'm not sure.
Well, we're going to go in camera.
It's always tricky when we have a closed session, we don't do that. We always just take the break and then we do them in the break. So, yeah.
Clerk, is there another question? No. Okay, hearing no other questions, then it's 26 minutes past 9. Is 5 minutes enough or do you need 10? 5? Okay. 5, we will reconvene at 9:31 and immediately on reconvening, we will go in camera for the 2 items. Okay, see you in 5 minutes.
Reminder that until we go to closed session, we're still live.